We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph in Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 23a. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah said that a chereshot of a katan can write a get, and the Gemara asked, but they don't have das, so how can that be? And Rashi explained, how can they write the get? They don't understand that it needs to be written lishma. And Rav Huna now answers, V'hu shaya gadol omer al gabav. We're talking about in a situation where there's an adult that is standing over them. Rashi explains, V'hu shaya gadol omer al gabav v'yomer lo ksov letzorech ploni. In other words, the adult is standing over the chereshot of a katan and saying, write it for so-and-so. To Kasav Rav Huna Masnis and Rav Elazar he deboy ksiva lishma. Rav Huna holds that our Mishnah follows Rav Elazar that ksiva lishma is required. The get does need to be written lishma. V'seiva the kamar shein kiyum haget el bechosmav. Now at the end of the Mishnah it said the reason why this is okay is because the real certification of a get is through the signatures. That doesn't sound like Rav Elazar. And so Rashi explains Hainu Eidei Mesira. Really, according to this understanding, that end line of the Mishnah is talking about the Eidei Mesira. It's not talking about the Eidei Chasima. It's not talking about the Eidim that sign the get. It's talking about the Eidim that see the giving of the get. To rov Gittin imsar and bifnei hachosman, because the majority of Gittin, they're given over in front of those who sign the get anyway. So those are identical. When you say ein kiyum haget el bechosmav, you're referring to the Eidei Mesira. V'hamitziyasa koi v'lo aresha. And it's going on the middle case. It's not going on the first case. Lachshure ksivas cheresh below gadol agabav. It's not saying that we're going to allow a cheresh to write it without an adult. That's not what it means. It's talking about the middle case of the Mishnah, which discusses the wife writing her own get. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, Elamayata, but according to that, Ovid kochavim v'Yisrael omed al gabav hachinami dekasher. Let's say you have an idol worshiper, a non-Jew, and a Jew is standing over him. Is that also kosher if the Ovid kochavim writes the get? V'chitem hachinami, if you're going to say, indeed, that is the case, it is kosher. V'atanya, but we learned in a Brisa not like that. The Brisa says Ovid kochavim, pasul, and Ovid kochavim is pasul, and therefore it sounds like even if it's a Yisrael omed al gabav, it would be a problem. And the Gemara answers to that, Ovid kochavim l'dayite denafshei ovid. And Ovid kochavim, he does according to what he wants to do. He's not listening to the person who's omed al gabav, who's standing over him. Rashi says l'dayite denafshei ovid to hagadol, meaning the reason is because the Ovid kochavim is an adult. V'yesh bo das, and he has das. V'yafal pi shezeh omer lo kain. Even though the Yisrael who's omed al gabav tells him to do it for this reason, for this person, shemahu gamar b'libo l'shem acher. Maybe he's thinking to do it for someone else. Aval katan ein bo das, but a katan has no das. Elu lamash hazem etzaveyu, except the das for whatever is being instructed to him. And so therefore by a katan, let's say by a chereshot of a katan, if you have a gadol omed al gabav, that's going to work. They're going to follow the instruction. But an Ovid kochavim is l'dayte denafshei ovid. And the Gemara continues, Hadar Amar Rav Nachman, but then Rav Nachman said, Lav mil sehi diamri. What I'm saying is not true. To me, the kapasa leila Ovid kochavim le'inyan hava mechlal de le'inyan ksiva kasher, because from the fact that an Ovid kochavim is not allowed to deliver the get, that implies that actually an Ovid kochavim is allowed to write the get. And the Gemara says, V'atanya, didn't we just say in the Brisa above, Ovid kochavim pasul, that an Ovid kochavim is pasul, he's disqualified from writing the get. And the Gemara says to that, Ahi Rav Elazar, that Brisa follows Rav Elazar, Diyamar Eidei Mesira Karti Uva'inam Ksiva Lishma. Rav Elazar says Eidei Mesira Karti, and therefore we need the writing to be Lishma. And so therefore, V'avadai Ovid kochavim adai denafshei kav. It's certainly an Ovid kochavim is going to do it according to whatever he's thinking, and he's not going to do it Lishma. And Rashi says, Lav milsi the amri ela me'ata Ovid kochavim v'Yisrael omed. That argument that I made, that an Ovid kochavim with the Yisrael omed al gabav, that argument's not good. The Havasir laid the pasul vaday kasher. It sounded like from that argument, Rav Nachman had initially seemed to be saying an Ovid kochavim is pasul, but it's not true, says Rav Nachman. Really, an Ovid kochavim is kasher. V'afilu ein Yisrael omed al gabav. Even if Yisrael is not omed al gabav, really Rav Nachman is saying that an Ovid kochavim is kasher. V'gabe chereshot v'katan nami. And by chereshot v'katan also the same is true. Let's the Rav Huna. We don't follow Rav Huna. T'afagav de'ein gadol omed al gabav nami kasher. Even if there's no adult standing over the chereshot of a katan, it's kasher. The Masnis and Rebbe Meir here, and the point over here is because according to Rav Nachman, our Mishnah is Rebbe Meir. The lo boy ksiva lishma, the ksiva lishma is not required. The darash v'kasav dekra chasim aseidim, because he understands that the word v'chasav in the pasuk is referring to the signatures of the eidim. And Rav Nachman explains because since we disqualify in Ovid kochavim at the end of the Mishnah Linyan Hava in terms of delivering a get, because he's not part of the parsha of Gittin and Kiddushin, a person is not able to be a shliach for something that is not relevant to him. By ksiva we don't discuss Ovid kochavim. So you see that only by hava the Ovid kochavim is a problem. In terms terms of writing, an Ovid Kochav would be kosher. Kediktani time, and just like the reason is given in the Mishnah, Shein Kiyam Haget Ela B'chosmav, that the Kiyam Haget is done through the signatures. That's all that really matters. The Ksiva doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to us if it's written Shalol Lishma. The Itana V'Shayir Haveleinami L'Shur B'Seif, because if you're already leaving it out, if you're going to argue we just left out Ovid Kochavim, we should have left it out in the Seif as well. Clearly, we're not leaving out Ovid Kochavim. We're saying we're listing Ovid Kochavim as disqualified in terms of delivering the get, and therefore that implies that the fact that the Ovid Kochavim is not listed in the Mishnah about writing the get, that the Ovid Kochavim is kosher to write a get. And again, that's why Rav Nachman argues when the Mishnah says Hakol Ksherin Lichtov Es Haget, everybody really is allowed to write a get because the writing is not important. The pasuk, when it talks about v'chasav, is talking about the signing. Again, that's Rav Nachman's explanation. And Rashi continues, then the Gemara said, Ahid the Tanya Pasal, that Braisa which said that an Ovid Kochavim is Pasal to write a get, that's Rebbe Lozer, he dam Edim Mesira Karti, that's Rebbe Lozer who says Edim Mesira Karti, V'chasim Aseidim Einem in Torah, and the signatures therefore are not from the Torah, Hilkach V'chasav La Aksav Haget, therefore when the Torah says V'chasav La, it's really going on the writing, Uva'inon Ksiva L'Shma, and we require Ksiva L'Shma, V'avadai Ki Kosvei Ovid Kochavim Lav L'Shmahu, and certainly when an Ovid Kochavim writes it, it's not L'Shma, the Ovid Kochavim Adai the Nafshei Kovid, because an Ovid Kochavim does what he wants, and that's why the Brisa says it is possible when an Ovid Kochavim writes the get. And the Gemara continues, Omer Rav Nachman says, Omer Hayer Rav Meir would say, Afilu Mitzvah Ba'ashba Chosmu V'Nasnu La Kasher. Even if a get is found in the garbage, if it gets signed, then he can sign it and give it to her, and it's kosher, meaning to say the writing is not important, the writing doesn't need to be Lishma, and that's why even if it's found already written Ba'ashba, it's still going to be kosher according to Rav Meir, because Eidei Chasim Akarti. Eisvei Rava Rav Nachman, Rava asks Rav Nachman, V'chasav lo Lishma, we say that V'chasav lo means it has to be written Lishma. My lav Ksivas HaGet, isn't that referring to the actual writing of the get? That the writing of the get does need to be Lishma. And the Gemara says, Lo, no, as we've answered previously, Chasim Aseidim, when it says V'chasav lo, according to Rav Meir, that refers to the signatures of the Eidim, that needs to be Lishma. Eisvei Rava asks another question, Kol get shenechdav shelo l'shomisha pasel, any get that's not written Lishma is pasel. And again, the Gemara answers along the same lines. Ema, we can say what that really means is shenechdam shelo l'shomisha pasel. If it's signed, not Lishma, then it's pasel. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei, he asks another question, Kishu kosvo ki'ilu kosvo Lishma, when he writes it, it's as if he writes it Lishma. And the Gemara says, my lav, is it not, is this Brisa not saying, Kishu kosvo l'torah Lishma, when he writes the Torah Lishma, the Torah again is the main part of the get that has the name of the husband and the wife, etc. Ki'ilu kosvo l'tofes Lishma, it's as if he wrote the Tofes Lishma, meaning when he writes the Torah Lishma, it's as if the whole thing is written Lishma. That's the only part that really needs to be written Lishma, but the point is, it sounds like from here, the writing does need to be Lishma. And the Gemara says, Lo, no, that's not what the Brisa means. Kishu chosmo Lishma, ki'ilu kosvo Lishma. What it means is when he signs it Lishma, it's as if he writes it Lishma. And the Gemara continues by saying, if you want, I could say another approach to these Brisas above, Hani Masnisa Moni, Rebbe Lozer, he Damer, Edim Mesira Karti. All these Brisas that you bring above, they follow the opinion of Rebbe Lozer, who says Edim Mesira Karti, and Enochinami, they hold that the Ksiva does need to be Lishma, but again, Rabbi Meir holds that the Ksiva does not need to be Lishma, because he holds it as the Chasima that is referred to by the Pasuk, when the Pasuk says, V'chasav la. And the Gemara continues, Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel, and Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, the explanation of our Mishnah is, V'usha shayir makam hatoref. The Mishnah, when it says the Chereshot of a Katan can write the get, it's talking about where they leave out the Torah. The Chereshot and Katan are writing the unimportant part of the get, they're writing the Tofes, but in Ochinami, the Torah cannot be written by a Chereshot or a Katan. And similarly, Rav Chaga says in the name of Ula, our mission is talking about a situation where he leaves out the Torah, again meaning the Chereshot of a Katan are not writing the main part of the get. For Rebbe Lozer, and according to this approach, our Mishnah follows Rebbe Lozer, the main part of the get cannot be written by a Chereshot of a Katan, the main part of the get needs to be written Lishma. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Zreika Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Zreika says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Ein Torah, this is not the correct explanation. My Ein Torah, what does it mean Ein Torah? Amar Rabbi Abba says, Kana Hodiacha, She'ein Koach Lishma. Our Mishnah here is telling us that there is no halacha that it has to be written Lishma. Rabbi Meir, Hidomar Eide Chasim Akarti, and our Mishnah follows Rabbi Meir, who says Eide Chasim Akarti. It's the Chasima that is important, and that's what our Mishnah is saying when the Mishnah says a Chereshot of a Katan can write a get. But the Gemara says, V'amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lozer. But didn't Rabba Bar Bar Chana say that Rabbi Yochanan said our Mishnah is Rabbi Lozer, and now we're saying that according to Rabbi Yochanan, Ein Torah, that our Mishnah is not Rabbi Lozer, that our Mishnah is Rabbi Meir. And to that the Gemara says, Amoroi Ninu, V'yal Liba de Rabbi Yochanan. There's a machlokas Amoroim, what exactly Rabbi Yochanan said. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hakol ksherin lahavi es haget. Everybody is kosher to deliver a get, chutz mecheres, shota v'kotin, v'suma v'ovet kochavim, except for a deaf mute, an imbecile, a minor, a blind person, or a non-Jew. And the Mishnah continues, Kibel ha-katan v'higdil. Let's say katan receives the get and then he gets older. Cheresh v'nispakeach, or he's a deaf mute and then he heals. Suma v'nispateach, or he's blind and then he heals. Shota v'nishtafer, let's say he's an imbecile and then he heals. Over kochavim v'niskayer, let's say he's a non-Jew and he converts. Possible in all of these situations, it's possible because he's initially receiving the get, either as a katan, a cheresh, etc. Aval pikeach v'nischarish v'chazer v'nispakeach. But let's say he was a pikeach when he received the get, then he became a deaf mute, and then when he's giving over the get, he's healed. Or the same thing by blind, pasuach v'nistame v'chazer v'nispateach. He's able to see, then he becomes blind, then he's able to see again. Shafe v'nishtate v'chazer v'nishtafe. His mind is sound, and then he becomes an imbecile, and then his mind is sound again. Kosher in all of these cases, it's kosher. Zehaklal, this is the rule. Kol shetchiloso v'sofo b'das kosher. As long as in the beginning and in the end the individual has das, it is kosher, that is sufficient. And the Gemara says, B'shlama chereshot v'katan, I understand why chereshot v'katan are not allowed to deliver a get, the lav b'nei deyaninu, because they do not have das. Over kochavim nami de la bar heteru, and over kochavim also, he's not a bar heteru, meaning he's not in the halachas of kiddushin and gittin, and therefore if he's not within those halachas, he can't be a shliach for that as well. Elosuma amaylo, but a blind person, why not? What's the issue with a blind person delivering a get? Amar Rav Sheshes says, Lefisha eno yodeya mimi notzlo l'mi nosno, because a blind person doesn't know who he's receiving the get from and who he's giving it to, and therefore he can't be a shliach. But the Gemara says, Ma'askefla Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asks the following question: Heich suma mutter beishto, heich b'nei adam mutar b'neshosayim v'layla. How is a blind person allowed to be with his wife? How can people in general be with their wives at night? Ela b'tviyaseina dekala. Rather, it must be with some recognition of the voice. Hachanami b'tviyaseina dekala. So too over here, a blind person should be able to be a shliach through the recognition of the voice. The fact that they can't see who they're taking the get from or giving it to, that should not be an issue. And so the Gemara says, Elamar Rav Yosef. Rather, Rav Yosef says, what's the explanation? Why can't a blind person in the Mishnah deliver a get? Hacha b'chutz la'aretz askinan. Here we're talking about in chutz la'aretz. Devoy lemember b'fanei nechta. We're talking about a scenario where the shliach needs to say b'fanei nechta. In front of me it was written, in front of me it was signed. V'lo matzi lemember. A person who's blind is not able to say that because he can't see that it was written. He can't see that it was signed. Amar le Abai said to him, but according to that, pasuach v'nistama. Let's say the person was able to see and then he becomes blind. He's able to say b'fanei nechta because at the time it was written and signed, he was able to see. That should be kosher. V'akatani, but what does it say in our Mishnah? It says pasuach v'nistama v'chazer v'nispateach kosher. That only if he was able to see and then he was blind and then again able to see, it's kosher. Chazer v'nispateach in lo chazer v'nispateach lo. Only if he's able to see at the time of the delivery, but if he's not able to see again at the time of the delivery, no, then it would be a problem. And so the Gemara says, "Hu adin diafagav de lo chazer v'nispateach." The same would be true even if he's not able to see at the time of delivering the get. The truth is, all by the blind case, all he needs to be able to do is to be able to see at the time that it's written and signed, so he can say b'fanei nechta. Ve'aydi de katani shafi v'nishtata v'chazer v'nishtafa. But since by the case of a shota, by the case of an imbecile, there certainly he needs to have been of sound mind at the beginning and the end. So therefore, we say that over here as well. Time of the chazer v'nishtafa, halo chazer v'nishtafa lo. The only reason it works there is because he has a sound mind at the time of the delivery. Otherwise, it would not be good. So Tananami, so that's why the Mishnah also says pasuach v'nistam and v'chazer v'nispateach. That's why it says he's able to see, then he's blind, then he's able to see. But really, at the time of the delivery, he does not have to be able to see. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ravashi says, Dekanami, I'll even bring you a proof to this from our Mishnah itself. Tekatani, because it says that in the Mishnah, Zehaklal, this is the rule, Kol Shetchilaso V'sofo B'das Kosher. It says his beginning and his end needs to be with Das, specifically by Das, so then at the beginning and the end you need to have Das. V'lo Katani Kol Shetchilaso V'sofo B'kashras Kosher. It doesn't say that the beginning and the end need to be V'kashras, which would have included all the cases in the Mishnah, that at the beginning and the end he needs to be healthy, so to speak. That's not true, because again, in the case of a summa, in the case of a blind individual, he doesn't need to be healthy at the end. He only needs to be kosher at the beginning. It doesn't need to be kosher, so to speak, at the end. It's still kosher, even if he's blind when he's delivering it. And the Gemara says, Shema Mina, indeed, you see that is the case from the language of the Mishnah. And the Gemara continues, Boy Minei Rabbi Ami. They asked Rabbi Ami the following question: Evid Maush Yasa Shliach Lekabel Get Isha Miyad Bala. What about a slave? Is he able to become a shliach in order to receive the Get Isha from her husband? And the Gemara says, Amar Louis said to them, from the fact that the Mishnah excludes and disqualifies an Ovid Kochavim. And Rashi points out that this question is in general by an Eved. Can an Eved be a shliach, whether we're talking about a shliach leholacha, a shliach that's delivering the get, or a shliach lekabel, a shliach that's receiving the get? It just happens to be that the question in the Beis Medrash was about whether an Eved can be a shliach lekabel. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis.